Hey everybody, College Railroader here. Today I want to talk about a very different concept when it comes to knowing your layouts and knowing what kind of trains you're looking for. So the top tip for this month is knowing which trains were in their correct time period. And for example, and I'll definitely show a lot of the trains that I have and how I have over almost 100 years worth of trains in my layout, going all the way from the little locomotive that I have all the way to the GG1 that's parked right over here. There's a lot of history in these trains, and so knowing which time period these trains belong in will also kind of help you which freight cars to look for, what buildings to look for, a lot of things like that. So come follow me. So starting off the bat, we have the nice 260, otherwise known as a Mogul, Mogul, that's how it's spelled. And this train was around from 1870 all the way up till 1957. Granted, there's always still a lot of trains that are still in operation today. For example, that kind of specific style, the 260, is actually, funny enough, in Walt Disney World in Florida. So you can see another recreation of that kind of train there in Florida. But yeah, so these trains were definitely old-timey, very old, but they were the classic style of a locomotive that many of us see today. And right behind it, it's pulling some coal hoppers. Now, the first all-steel coal hopper was created in 1896. And so obviously in today's time, they always kept updating it, making it bigger, making it carry heavier loads, different shapes and sizes. And so they still use coal hoppers today, or hoppers as they're traditionally called. However, now they pull gravel and ballast, as coal is not really the most efficient and economically friendly use of fuel. And speaking of economic and fuel, another kind of power is the refrigeration cars. Now, the commercial use for these cars is the turning point of the century, so the year 1900. Yet the first icebox car was in the early 1850s. Whereas the modern day, in the 21st century refrigeration car was really made in the 1990s. So you have a wide range to play around with when working with refrigeration cars. The next train up is the GG1, mainly powered by electricity. As you can see, the pantographs on the side is what would have pulled, or what would have given the great train power. Mine are down, but you can always have them up, and when you're modeling, you could actually put the wires across the layout. This train was around the 1930s up until the 1980s. So you have a nice 50-year window to work with. And it's being pulled by lovely silver passenger cars, which you would have typically seen in the 1940s as well as the 1950s. So having that GG1 pull those cars is a great staple if you want to do like a 1950s layout theme. Coming up next are the New York Central passenger cars. These beautiful cars, again, were also from the 1950s and 60s. That nice black and gray silver, that iconic look, really kind of started in the 50s. And so as you can see, these nice bright cars also include dining and baggage cars. Just a really nice train, and also really nice passenger cars to have. Next up, number 501 is an EMD GP7. It was also around the 1950s, yet it was also up until the 1980s is when they officially retired them. So as you guys see, it's pulling great freight cars, and it's been used in my layout a couple of times before. A nice, really heavy train, and it just looks wonderful across any layout, regardless of what time period, personally. I think it's a really nice train and train type, really, to look into. Next up is one of my oldest diesels that I have, a GE U23B. This train was from 1968 all the way to 1987. Similar to the GP7, it's just a nice classic freight diesel, as I like to call it. Great sound, great strength. It can really pull a lot, but when you think of a freight diesel, I usually think of those two. Another train that I think of, and mainly it's because I live really close to that area and I see them a lot, are the Providence and Worcester's GE U18B. Now these trains were kind of built and commissioned from the 1970s all the way to 1985. And so this is now more of a modern freight diesel. So definitely the GE U2 3B and the GE U1 8B. Those two specifically, I think, are really of a modern day freight diesel. Again, they can pull a lot. They really sound great if you get them with sound. Really nice diesels to have. Up next are the classic Amtrak Amfleet passenger cars. These cars, specifically the ones that are being shown to you right now, were from 1975 all the way to 1983. Again, passenger cars are a little bit updated more often, especially now Amtrak, the actual company, has released a lot of more new passenger cars that they're releasing. So when you're looking into doing a specific date when it comes to your layout, make sure you try to find the correct year for your Amtrak cars, as those constantly keep changing. But such a great addition to any layout just because of the look and the sleekness of it. It's a very nice touch. And the last one, our infamous subway train, the Lexington Avenue Express. These were around, obviously the first subways were around the turn of the century, again in 1900s, 1930s. However, this specific tram that we have is from the 1980s. And so when you look at how nice it is, again, nice color, moves really fast, and you can actually program it to stop along certain areas, or you can have it talk and interact with your layout. A really beautiful train to have. But that train specifically, again, was from the 1980s, and so it's really important, like the Amtrak, to really know the year of your passenger cars for the subway. As you guys saw, it's amazing how there's so many trains, over 100 years worth of trains, and train history for that matter, and how different train companies are able to produce so many trains spanning from over 150 years. And so it's really important as a model railroader to know, again, which trains you're looking for, what is your time period. Like mentioned before in last month's episode, you always have a window of around 25 years to work with. So if you're doing like a modern day 21st century, you can have trains that were from the 80s. And that's true in today's time. They don't, you don't always see brand new trains always running around. There's always older trains that are still in perfect working condition. And so it's just really cool to know, like mentioned before, which trains you want to look into. Do you want more of a diesel to run the layout? Do you want more of an old-fashioned steam locomotive? It's just amazing. Again, like before, you have such creativity when it comes to this, and you have a lot of freedom when working with these trains. And just like that, you're on the right track. I'll see you real soon when we come back. Thank you so much for watching the College Railroader today. Be sure to look out for more videos coming soon. Take care, folks.